About a year ago, I went on a 5-day solo retreat in the mountains of New Mexico where I meditated several hours a day. It turned out to be a life-changing experience, which was definitely something I did not expect. So I wanted to share about my experience here on my podcast. I've had a few friends ask me about it and what I did on that trip, and I kept telling people I'd eventually talk about it on a podcast episode. So I'm finally getting around to that. That trip was basically the first time I'd really meditated. I'd tried half-heartedly over the years a few times for a few minutes at a time, but I'd never really focused on meditating and never done it for more than a day in a row. I'd always liked the idea of meditation, and I've always been interested in Buddhist and Eastern philosophies and practices since I was young. Part of the reason for me having a bit of a mental block for that is due to some experiences I had when I was younger, back when I was struggling with some mental issues and I dropped out of college due to those struggles. Part of the manifestation of my mental unwellness back then was me being a bit obsessed with Eastern and Buddhist philosophies. I thought when I was at the peak of my unwellness that I was possibly reaching some kind of state of transcendence. I was also at the time smoking too much marijuana, which definitely does not help you when you're depressed and anxious. There's studies showing linkages between marijuana usage and more psychotic and delusional kinds of things. I talk more about those experiences, about my mental struggles in college and dropping out. I talk more about that in a previous episode, if you're curious. But anyway, those experiences were why I've always had a bit of anxiety when it came to trying to meditate. I would just have some associations with that unhappy and stressful period of my life. And obviously, anxiety like that isn't really conducive to the relaxing state you want to achieve in meditation. And also, I'd add that just in general, I've always been a pretty anxious person, highly anxious person. So I think meditation just doesn't come easily to people like that, like me, even if you took away my earlier experiences. But there were a few recent factors that led to me wanting to try meditating more seriously. The main one was a talk that I had for this podcast in February of last year, in 2024, with Brian Koppelman, the creator of the poker movie Rounders and the show Billions and other shows and movies. Brian talked about his life-changing experiences with transcendental meditation, his personal story of how meditation had hugely reduced his anxiety, got me thinking again, I really need to try this. So I'll play the clip from that episode where Brian talks about this. I debated including the long clip from that episode, almost chose to not include this longer clip, but in the end I decided to include a pretty long clip because it was what got me to go down this path, so I figured it might be persuasive to you too. But if you want to skip ahead to my experiences, just keep skipping until you hear just me talking and not Brian. Do you mind if I ask you about transcendental meditation?
I'm totally happy. I love talking about it. Yep.
I know that you're a big proponent of that, and I was wondering if you explained it to a lay audience, what are how would you pitch it? What are the benefits that you get from it?
Like Tim Ferriss says, I think he said something along these lines. I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting him. That it might be the thing that is most in common among the guests that he's had on his show is that they do some form of meditation. I think I started meditating in 2011. And I want to say this succinctly. For me, the benefit is it reduced the physical manifestations of anxiety by something like 80 or 85%.
Wow.
And, one of the things is that when people want to sell stuff, they'll say it makes your anxiety disappear. And we as human beings go, well, that's bullshit. Because nothing can, because we're humans and we know we're mortal. So we have anxiety. But it just made the physical manifestations, the stomach or the heart, it just suddenly, quickly, a month in, that stuff just the volume just went way down on it. And that alone, enough. Then Clarity of thought, peacefulness, sense of well-being. Look, exercise. I'm talking about lifting, but I've always been someone who exercises a lot, and part of why I started like lifting and stuff is because as you get older, if you let yourself stay out of shape, but you still play sports really hard, you can just hurt yourself all the time. And if you're fat, like I was, it's just bad. So I had to start. Then you throw the cardio piece in, and you're like, well, I got to do the other thing too. But so exercise has always been meditative too for me. I can get to that sort of alpha state that they call it. Meditation is 20 minutes. The way I do it, transcendental meditation, TM. There's a book by David Lynch, the great filmmaker. The book is called Catching the Big Fish, and he talks about it in a way that I find incredibly compelling. But essentially, you're repeating a nonsense word to yourself quietly in your brain.
Your mantra.
For 20 minutes and twice a day. And it's very easy and it's very calming. I just feel better doing it. I had a lot of questions going in. I had read all the sort of negative things about TM, and I was very aware of it. I had very clear rules for myself about the ways in which I would engage. I would go take these lessons, and then that's the extent of my involvement. And it's been, by the way, the extent. I've never gone on some retreat or didn't. It's just I find this technique useful. And I'm just always after like whatever can look, it's hard being a person. And so whatever makes being a person a little bit easier, I'll take. And because, it goes back to the thing I said about mortality. And, we understand people are fragile. It means the people you love are fragile. And that stuff's scary sometimes. So anything that'll help, I'm interested in. And exercise is a huge one. Walking, not just as exercise, but, walking is really helpful. Mm-hmm. Journaling is helpful, I think. And I think transcendental meditation, for me, very useful.
So does the form of the meditation, is it always the same? So it's 20 minutes of repeating the mantra, and it doesn't vary from that?
Yeah, but the thing is, like when you learn TM, it's not a rigor. It's not a rigid. It's not rigid. You're not forcing yourself to say this mantra over and over again. You're allowing this mantra to surface, and you're kind of like engaging with it. And then sometimes your thoughts come in, and it's like other meditation you've heard people. Your thoughts come in, and then your thoughts move out, and the mantra resurfaces. And it's just being in that space. And I'll say, like, I will not play. So I do the morning meditation every single day of my life. Like I haven't missed one since 2011. And I'd say I do the one in the afternoon, 70, 80% of the time. Depends on period. Right now I'm in a period of time where I'm doing it every day, but sometimes like life makes it hard to do the second one. But I will never play poker at night without doing this. Like never. It's a zero for me. If maybe I did it twice and I just know. So like when I will meditate this afternoon before I go play poker tonight, for sure. And that will be useful. It will reset me in a way. It doesn't mean I'm going to win, by the way. I can still lose.
And you said it's something you say internally. You don't say it out loud. Is that right?
Correct. You never say it out loud. Yeah.
Is your mantra secret, or can you say what it is?
No, you don't say what it is. And the reason is you don't want to attach anything to it. It's a word, sound, noise. You don't want to attach someone's reaction. You don't want to attach that moment. It really is just something to break the cycle of the pattern of thoughts.
You don't want association.
No, you don't want any.
Yeah.
No one knows it. And it's not because it's like some state secret. It's not a special. It's just because it keeps you pristine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what do you have your own thoughts on what the mechanism is by how it helps you? Is it basically like because you said these other thoughts come in and you basically are able to kind of brush them aside? Do you think it kind of sets you up to be more easily able to brush aside anxieties?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I was reading a book. This is not this is a way to get to the answer. I was reading, I think, a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, who's this amazing Buddhist, and he had this phrase that he said he repeated to himself, and he found it very useful. And I've done this not as TM because it's not TM, but I've done this sometimes to go to bed at night if it's I somehow am not able to fall asleep and my thoughts racing. And he says, I am not my body. I'm not even my mind. And by repeating that to himself, not out loud, it's a reminder in a way that the thoughts you think aren't necessarily valid. We all have thought things that we didn't put into action or that turned out to be wrong, fears, right? And so just reminding yourself, yeah, you might feel a twinge in your knee, but you are not the twinge in your knee. it's useful. Anything to create a tiny bit of separation
Mm.
from the thoughts that kind of own us most of the time and our essential nature. Any way that we can sort of separate those slightly, I think has tremendous benefit. And
Hmm.
I think TM, though I don't know, this is really, I really don't know the answer to this, but like what it feels like to me is that there's probably a cycle of like counterproductive thoughts that we all have. Who knows where they're from? Who knows when we took them on? Whether they're worries, fears, self criticism, whatever the thing is.
Hmm.
The mantra has a way of like, if that thing is a circle that's just going and going, and then maybe the mantra just kind of like takes us somewhere else away from that and breaks it so that you have a minute to just have some peace.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like breaking the rumination or the ruts that we get into our normal
I would say people should,
boring
yeah,
ruts. Yeah.
yeah, exactly right. Ruts. People should look at, I mean, there's a lot of EEG studies and stuff, brainwave studies, and they're doing more and more. Like there are a lot of science now on this question. I was even reading recently. Recently I put into two different of the AI engines a bunch of questions about meditation, the various forms, and about whether what the science said. And I was really prepared to be told that it's all been debunked, but it just hasn't been. Like the science really stands up for its benefits, and
Hmm.
you can just find that out. Like that's just out there, people looking at the brainwaves and stuff.
Yeah, and like you said, it's there there's some understandable mechanisms by which you can see it helping you, and it's not like some things you hear about you're like that makes no sense. Like
Yes.
you can see the logic there. Yeah. So that was a clip from my talk with Brian Koppelman. As soon as Brian said it had reduced his anxiety by like 80%, I really decided I needed to get into it again and try to give this a try. Another factor there was that I was going through some hard things in my personal life. When I talked to Brian last year, my wife was in the process of leaving me and us getting a divorce. She had left once suddenly a year earlier and then had come back a few months later, and we were trying to work things out, but it wasn't looking good, and I did not think it was going to work out. So I was more anxious and emotionally fragile than I had been for a long time. And I actually have an episode that I'd written about some of the struggles I had during that time, with the thought that it might help other people who are dealing with similar struggles. But I am still sitting on that episode to make sure I feel good about sharing it because it is so personal. So a few weeks after I talked with Brian Koppelman on a road trip with my wife, we listened to some of David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish, which Brian referenced. I didn't really like the book and I didn't listen to much of it. I couldn't relate to Lynch saying he had an immediate feeling of immense joy when trying transcendental meditation. I still can't relate to that now. But everyone is different, of course. It's just that his description of his experiences made it clear that he and I were very different people, and I didn't get much out of his descriptions. And I mention this just in case that's interesting or helpful for anyone who has listened to that book by Lynch and had a similar reaction, and maybe thought because of that meditation wasn't right for them. In August of last year, I went to a place called the Lama Foundation, which is in the mountains of Taos, New Mexico. I used to live in Albuquerque, and I'd been to the Lama Foundation a couple times before. My wife had once had a 3-day solitary retreat there, what they call a hermitage, and she had really enjoyed it. The Lama Foundation's main claim to fame is that it was where Richard Alpert, aka Ram Dass, wrote the well-known book Be Here Now. I'm not a fan of that book. I found it quite silly, to be honest. I'm skeptical of almost all metaphysical and spiritual writings, and that specific book I found to be especially silly. Basically, long story short, it involves Alpert doing a bunch of psychedelics and traveling to India and believing he's witnessed amazing magical acts, but he's also doing so many drugs. He's an extremely unreliable narrator about what's real and what's not. But leaving aside any metaphysical or spiritual beliefs, the Lama Foundation is just a great property, and they have these 2 hermitage cabins there where you can spend your days uninterrupted without seeing anyone else if you don't want to. And they bring you foods you request, and they leave them in a box where you can get them and make them yourself. The area is just very beautiful and surreal and intense seeming. Also, especially at night when the sun is setting and the light is a bit strange, and there are these old fire charred snags, these old trees that make the scene look very otherworldly. It does put you in a more spiritual frame of mind, I think. I'll just give you a description of some of the decisions I made on that trip regarding how I approached trying to have a meaningful meditation experience. First, I decided to fast for 4 days. I'd fasted before, once for 5 days, and that was years before. I'd also read about the idea that fasting puts you in a state more conducive to spiritual practice and inward focus. I had observed that myself when I fasted before. There was an interesting mental state where things felt more intense but calm. It might just be lightheadedness, but I don't really know. But I do think there is something to that. I also decided to practice a mix of transcendental meditation with the mantra repetition, the one Brian described, and just a more common breath mindfulness meditation, breathing and focusing on your breath and observing your thoughts. I printed out some instructions and tips for both of these kinds of meditations to bring with me on the trip. Another decision I made was to not have any devices or books with me. The only things I took with me to the cabin were a few articles of clothing and a pen and some paper. I locked up my phone at the Lama Foundation Lodge. My general schedule while I was there was something like this: wake up when the sun rose, which was around 6 a.m., try some meditation for an hour or so, go for a long walk on the mountain trails or on the winding roads near the foundation, try meditation for another hour around noon or sometime in the afternoon, walk around some more, try meditation again for an hour in the evening. So it was around 3 hours of meditation, more or less, per day, sometimes a little bit more. I also made the decision to not read much or write much. The first 3 days, I didn't read or write anything. I was trying to embrace pure experience as much as I could. I broke from that the fourth and fifth day, writing down some observations and reading some books they had in the cabin, including some of Be Here Now, which is in their cabins. One thing I struggled with on the trip was my back. I've never been very good at sitting in the traditional meditation position, or just the legs crossed, straight back position. I just sat mostly in a straight back chair that they had in the cabin, and that was my usual position. As many people will tell you, you can meditate in any position. I mention this in case anyone thinks that you need to be in a certain position. The important thing is just that you're comfortable, although you also shouldn't be too comfortable, as then you might just end up falling asleep. For most of the time there, I felt like I was not meditating correctly, that I wasn't, quote, doing it right. That was a usual experience I've had trying to do meditation in the past. And I think a lot of people's experience doing meditation when they first start out. I was having the often described experience of trying to clear my mind and just observe and be, but constantly having the usual trains of thoughts and random observations and random thoughts about tasks I needed to do, all those kinds of things flooding my mind. But as I learned from my own experiences on that trip and from reading more later, it is important to embrace the idea that there is no, quote, doing it right, that one should try to recognize that you are entering the process, that you are trying to observe your experiences, trying to calm your mind. One should try to not add insult to injury by thinking that one is not doing it right. One should try to embrace the idea that you are just learning about yourself and about your existence. And also, once you get to a point where you start feeling like you are just a part of the universe, that kind of cliche, I think it becomes easier to forgive yourself for, quote, not doing it right, or missteps you seemingly have.
Watch what's going on. Watch not only what's going on the outside, but also what's going on the inside. Treat your own thoughts your own reactions, your own emotions about what's going on outside, as if those inside reactions were also outside them, that you're just watching. And follow, simply observe how they go. Note now, you may say, this is difficult. I am bored by watching what is going on. Let's say you sit quite still and you are simply observing what is happening. All the sounds outside, all the different shapes and lights in front of your eyes, all the feelings on your skin, inside your skin, belly rumbles, thoughts going on inside your head, chatter, chatter, chatter. I ought to be writing a letter to so-and-so. I should have done this, all this bilge going on. See, you just watch it. But then you say to yourself, but this is boring. Now, watch that too. What is it? What kind of a funny feeling is it that makes you say, but this is boring? Where is it? Where do you feel it? I should be doing something else instead. What's that feeling? What part of your body is it in? Is it in here? Is it in here? Is it in the soles of your feet? Where is it? Boring. The feeling of boredom can be very interesting if you try to look it out. So you simply watch at everything going on without attempting to change it in any way, without judging it, without calling it good or bad. You watch it. That is the essential process of meditation.
That was a clip of Alan Watts talking about how he views the nature of meditation and its importance. After my meditation experiences, I became an Alan Watts fan. I thought his book, The Way of Zen, is great. If you're curious about other resource recommendations, I've put some on the entry for this episode at my podcast site, behavior-podcast.com. So in the first few days of the retreat, I had a few minor positive feelings during meditation, moments that did feel meaningful, that I was starting to get some sort of hang of it. Some of that enjoyment was in the form of just having more time to think, to be free from the usual things like tasks and phone messages and internet stuff. Some of that was just the ability to let my mind wander and think of more meaningful existential things. Some of it was intellectual, logical aspects of Buddhist-related thought about the fact that I am a part of the universe. The universe is a part of me, that I am a part of the universe unfolding, those kinds of things. Some of the positive experiences were feelings of peace and connection, even as they were interspersed with feelings of frustration and doubts about what I was doing. For example, pessimistic skepticism that I was just way too desperate to have a meaningful experience, which might be in itself self-defeating. On the fourth day, I had a highly meaningful feeling after I'd been meditating in the afternoon, about an hour. For a few minutes, I felt filled with a glowing, peaceful feeling, a feeling that everything was right with the world and me, that I was tapped into something meaningful. So I finally understood what people were talking about when they talked about the peacefulness and joy of meditation at that moment. A little later that day, and on the fifth day, I had less intense but still peaceful and nice iterations of that feeling. It was all enough to make me feel like I'd at least tasted and touched what people mean when they praise meditation. I had had the experiences that would be enough to lead me to want to do those things more and to go further down that path. But I should say those experiences at the time were not what I consider life-changing. What I consider life-changing was noticing how I felt when I left and got back to my regular life. I just felt like a huge weight had lifted from me. It felt like there had been a heavy anxiety-producing weight, like around my heart, and that now I felt light and freed from that. Something I wrote a few weeks after the experience was that I felt that my heart had been encased in some protective armor due to the meditation experiences, that the things that usually bothered me and caused me pain and anxiety were not reaching me nearly as much now. And I'm talking everything from very small things like loud sounds that might usually make me jumpy and lead to anxious thoughts, to more major things like this stuff going on in my personal life. I just felt much more calm and like something strange it happened, inexplicable, about how I was processing anxiety and just events in my life. And that was entirely unexpected. It was surprising enough to me that I'd even had the joyful, intense experiences that I'd had a few times during the retreat. I was entirely prepared for the retreat to be just me mainly feeling frustrated, like I wasn't able to meditate like others were. I definitely didn't expect such a relatively small set of experiences to translate to such a big change in mood and feeling. And again, it's possible I could have had that life-changing experience afterwards, even without the very positive and joyful experiences. It's possible, even if I had been mostly frustrated during my trip, that maybe I would have had those more lasting changes. And I'll say it has been a quite lasting change. It's faded a bit, especially because I haven't kept up the meditation due to a lot of changes in my life, including my wife and I getting divorced, me starting a new relationship, moving to New York City, starting a new job, and more stuff. So it's a little hard to track my state of mind across all these various changes and what's due to what. But I do think that experience changed me in some fundamental, lasting way. I should mention, too, that it's not like I'm saying all my anxiety is removed or was removed. I don't want to paint a too rosy portrait of my life or what the meditation did for me. I'm still a quite anxious person, just as I always have been, and that's something I'm always trying to work on more. I want to meditate more, for one thing. But in major ways, the anxiety did decrease. And so I did have a similar experience to what Koppelman described, and I'm not sure if it was 80% like he said, but definitely a big decrease. And it's actually hard for me to compare now to go back to how I was feeling, before, but definitely a big increase or a big decrease in anxiety. And I do think the meditation experience built some stronger mental foundations in whatever way it worked, gave me some better base of calmness from which to operate and to which I'm partly able to return when I try to. For anyone who wants to try something like this, I'll just give a few tips and observations that I had along the way, which might serve to help you. And again, reach out to me if you do want to talk about this. Reach out to me at my website, behavior-podcast.com. Happy to field any questions. Not like I'm the biggest expert on this, obviously, but happy to. So here are a few tips. Again, don't worry too much about the position you're in. If a cross-legged or lotus position makes you uncomfortable, just sit in a comfortable straight back chair. Try not to beat yourself up with thoughts that you're not doing it right or that you're somehow ill-suited to practicing meditation. That is entirely normal. Keep trying to return to what you're trying to do, depending on the meditation style you've chosen. Keep trying to return to observing your breath or observing your thoughts. It's entirely natural to have all sorts of intrusive thoughts. I would think that even the best practitioners of meditation would still occasionally have those intrusive and random thoughts. You are there to learn about how your mind works and to observe it so as to understand yourself and your existence better. If you're really having trouble just being and have a lot of intrusive thoughts that are bugging you, I also think it's okay to just let them go like that for a while. If you can't beat them, just let them go on for a while and think about what you're going to think about. No one's grading you on this experience, and sometimes letting your thoughts go on for a while is what may be necessary for you to work them out of your system and relax more. I think this is especially true for people new to this way of being. I feel that my positive experience was also just partly about being free to think my own thoughts and connect with myself a bit. Because for me, how I tend to live my life, how I have lived my life for many years, my daily life is often just a parade of various tasks that I've set myself to do, things to get through. And that often includes even recreational activities like reading a book or watching a show or doing something recreationally, doing anything recreationally. Even those more fun things can start to feel like more assignments, a laundry list of things to do, especially if you're someone who feels, often like they're not doing enough and wants to get back to the various tasks they're trying to do and projects they're trying to do. So even apart from the meditation experiences, there was something very calming and grounding about that trip, and just being able to let my mind wander and to not be activity and task focused, to just feel free to sit and do nothing and daydream. And that was also an important takeaway for me, that I need to just make more time for just being and try not to feel pressured to always be filling my time up with various things. I also had this sense during the trip, during the 5 days, of different parts of myself fusing together in a better way, like of bringing various parts of myself more in alignment with each other. I think most of us are living such hectic lives, and I think that there can be very little time to let all your experiences and thoughts meld. There's not enough time for mental processing. So I think just sitting and being, whether you're meditating or not, is just time your mind can spend compiling and fusing all the various thoughts and motivations and goals and ideas and parts of yourself, and coupling them more tightly. During my trip, I had the sensation of my scattered inner multitude of voices coalescing in a stronger, more stable, more calm configuration. Another interesting part of all this is just how easy it's been for me to go from having such an amazing experience and being very excited about meditation to basically now not meditating at all. This is partly because of so many things going on in my life, as I've said, but it's still quite astounding to me. I haven't had many experiences that really amazed me, and this was one of them. And yet now I'm back to living as if that amazing experience didn't happen. You would think that having such an amazing experience, you'd want to continue down that path and keep pursuing it, keep chasing the dragon. And I do want to do that. I tell myself almost every day I need to make more time for the meditation. I sometimes tell myself, okay, tomorrow you'll get up early and do some meditation for a few minutes, and really start doing it every day or regularly. But then the next day rolls around and I'm tired and just want to sleep or rest a few more minutes before work. Plus, there is the knowledge that it's not that an immediately exciting or magical endeavor. I will have moments of joy occasionally doing it, and I know that there's long-term benefits to it. But those joys are not usually present, at least for me, in the experience of doing it immediately. It's a practice that is valuable, but the payoffs seem more long-term to me. Put another way, I experienced a magical thing, but the magic of it isn't directly obvious or available to me. I'm still not even sure what factors led to it being a magical experience. So that's another factor for me, failing to keep it up, even though I do want to keep it up. But maybe for now, it's enough for me to know that it did happen and that it did help me in some long-term way, and that it's there when I want or need to return to it. Have you had an interesting experience with meditation? Feel free to reach out to me at behavior-podcast.com and let me know about it. And again, I've got some books and other resource recommendations for you on the topic of meditation. You can find those on the entry for this episode on my site, behavior-podcast.com. In an upcoming episode, I want to talk about the concept of open individualism, which is also sometimes referred to as universalism. It's the belief that we are all basically a single person, that your and I's sense of self, of I, our personal feeling of existence, are manifestations of the same I feeling, that we are all of us who exist and have existed, manifesting the same I-ness. I'm sure that will sound pretty crazy to most people. It did to me at first too, but there's actually a lot of very interesting and pretty persuasive philosophical and intellectual support for this idea. It's something that is believed by quite a few smart people, even as it violates some of our more core ideas of what it means to be a person. So my goal mentioning that now is just to pique your curiosity, and also to encourage anyone who's into those ideas to reach out to me with their thoughts and observations, because I'm working on that episode now. And if you like this episode, you might like some previous episodes in the back catalog. For example, I have one where I talk to a physicist about what it's like to live without a belief in free will, and we get on some kind of related tangents there. Okay, that's it. I'm Zach Elwood, and this has been the People Who Read People podcast. Thanks for your interest. Music by Small Skies.